Welcome back to another episode of I Know, a Solo Beatles videocast where we talk all things Solo Beatles. Today, we are joined, he is not the elephant in the room, although that is part of his band name. We are joined by Gary Van Scyoc of the Elephant's Memory Band, and you may know him because he played on a very controversial album and is often regarded, unfortunately, as the worst solo Beatles album, which, of course, I don't agree with. Welcome, Gary Van Scyoc.
It's nice to be here with you, except right now I'm seeing a message box on my screen and I can't see a thing.
Oh, weird. Did you hit the chat button by accident?
I didn't hit anything.
And he played on the Sometime in New York City album, as I was saying, and he's a really great bass player. So first of all, I just want to get your kind of music history and what have you been listening to when we've kind of been locked up?
What have I been listening to?
Yeah.
I don't really listen to much. I really just try to stay up with, current new artists and that stuff, get that little listen. And really trying to concentrate on writing, try to be inspired. My last CD was in 2015, so it's time to get some new tunes together.
That'll be really awesome to hear. And when did you first hear of the Beatles, and were you a fan or kind of?
Oh, I was a huge fan. It was my senior year in high school, 1964, when a lot of that stuff hit the airwaves in my town of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I just remember riding around in the car, goofing around with buddies, and those songs would come on the radio and everybody would just stop and whoa, what's that? It was so new and fresh at that time.
What is your favorite Beatles album?
That's a good question. Maybe Revolver.
Correct.
It's hard to have one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're the Beatles.
I'd have to say 2 or 3. Of course, the obvious ones, Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour, were just groundbreaking, But when you go back but every time I hear an old album, very early, I get all excited all over again.
Yeah.
They're just so amazing.
So when did you first pick up the bass?
I was I think it was my freshman year in high school. My band director got me interested in the bass. We had a mixed quartet, singing quartet, 2 guys, 2 girls. And he wanted to incorporate instrumental backing stuff with that. And there really weren't a lot of people in my high school at that time that played bass. So I kind of got drafted and started on the stand-up bass. But luckily, he was a professional bass player. So I learned from somebody that was just a tremendous player right from the get-go. I used to go on gigs with him over to Pittsburgh, and I was underage. And I would just hang out in the clubs where he was playing. Learned a lot more about music and a lot more about a lot of other things.
And what was the first bass that you the first kind of bass guitar that you got?
That's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. I think my mother and father ordered a Silvertone from Sears and Roebuck, or it may have been a store similar to that called Montgomery Ward, I think it was called. So it was a very cheap bass, under $100. But once they saw that I was really interested in it, they didn't want to lay out a lot of money in the beginning. But after the Silvertone didn't last long, They took me over to Pittsburgh to the biggest music store at that time and bought me a brand new Fender jazz bass, which was huge because that in 1961, that was $300 or $400. Even back then, it wasn't cheap for them to do that.
I mean, yeah, that's probably close to 1,000 now,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. So that was not being from a rich family, that was a huge sacrifice for them. They both had to work, and so it's always been much appreciated. That's actually the bass that they bought me, was the one I ended up playing on the Madison Square Garden stage with John in 1972.
Do you still own the bass to this day?
I don't. The bass was so far gone, somehow in the mix, it got left by the wayside. There were so many to come after that, that I moved on, Hudson, I moved on to 5-string bass. So it was a matter that was just sitting around in the way. I had a fairly big apartment in New York, but once I got up to like 9, 10, 11 bass, it started getting a little crowded. So I regret getting rid of it, but I wouldn't be able to play it because it was totally worn out. The frets were gone. It had electronic problems. The actual wood of the neck was so worn out by my fingers that it would probably not have been repairable. But I'd like to have it for sentimental value.
Yeah, I mean, sentimental value is just, I think that sentimental value overcomes physical value. I mean, half of the Beatles albums.
Only in retrospect.
Yeah. So now I want to get kind of how did this whole Elephant's Memory? Do you want to give us a backstory of Elephant's Memory, please?
Sure. I mean, we would have to go all the way back into the mid 60s, where they got together. They were on 2 or 3, maybe. I'm not positive, but they were on 2 or 3 record labels before I even joined the band in 1971. They had an album on, well, actually, first of all, let's talk about the Midnight Cowboy movie. Elephant's Memory did the soundtrack for the Midnight Cowboy movie. They have a gold record for that, and that was 1969. But they had earlier albums than that, one on Metro Media and called Take It to the Streets. And they also had an album on Buddha Records, which was one of their first. So they had several albums out in the can and a couple of hit singles before I even joined the band. I actually joined the band in 71 to promote a hit single they had called Mongoose. Everybody can find that on YouTube. It was, I think it went to like top 40 in Cashbox and Billboard. It was a pretty nice little hit.
Yeah, it's a great song too.
It really is different.
Yeah. I mean, different is good with music.
Yeah.
And when did the working with John kind of come about?
One night in 1971, it was December, we played a concert out in Long Island called a station called WLIR. It was like a live broadcast. In those days, they give you a tape of it at the end of the show. And somehow a friend of ours, a political activist, Jerry Rubin, passed that tape to John and Yoko. We didn't even know that. So apparently they loved it. They told Jerry they wanted to hire us or at least come down and check it out, see what we thought about doing something like that. So unannounced, one night in December of 71, they showed up at our rehearsal studio down in Greenwich Village. The name of the studio was Magna Graphics, and they actually showed up and announced. So we kind of left them waiting out in the lobby for a while. It was kind of a really strange thing, you know. And after a while, they came in, and John had that white suit on from Abbey Road, and my jaw just like just dropped. It was just so exciting to meet him for the first time and all, you know. we played for a long time and almost all night. And John popped up at the end of the session and asked us if he could join our band. And we all looked at each other and went, come on, man, that can't be happening. But after a long while and sorting it all out, we had a complication with, we were still signed to Metro Media Records. So we had to talk about some legal issues, how we would end up being on Apple, if his lawyers could help us get out of our contract. It was complicated. It wasn't just, hey, come on and play with us, you know. We had to work out the little, the I's and cross the T's and the whole thing. So it was exciting. Yoko piped up after a couple hours and said that Plastic Ono, P-O, and E-M of Elephant's Memory spells poem. So that she was really getting off on that. So she already had the marketing thing going on, you know. So that was it. We got the call the next day. You didn't know whether you were going to wake up the next day and it was just a dream or whether it was actually happening. So we were all calling each other the day after going, is it really on? Is it true? And but it was. We went on salary with Apple, and it wasn't a couple of weeks until we were called upon to do the Mike Douglas show in Philadelphia, which was a daytime TV show in those days.
What are some of your memories? Do you have any memories from the Mike Douglas show?
Just a couple. How crazy it was playing with Chuck Berry. For one, he's renowned for like giving the band a rough time.
Yeah.
In this case, he kind of gave all of us a rough time because we ran over a few songs and what key they were in before the show, but Chuck came out and changed keys on John and asked him to play a solo when he had never even mentioned. It's only live TV in front of 25 million people, you know, no pressure.
Yeah, no
He
pressure.
never even mentioned to John that he wanted him to play a solo and kind of told him, take it, you know. And that was an awkward moment. Our guitar player kind of had to fill in for John because he wasn't even set up to play a lead. You know, his amp was set to play rhythm. And so that was a little wild. Even before that, when Chuck Berry showed up for the first day, you played 5 days on the Mike Douglas show. You did a show every day all week long. And so the first day we met Chuck, he came in just as soon as he cleared the door. He looked over at John and he stared him right in the face and he said, "Where's my royalties?" And it was like dead silence for about that long. And then he broke out in a big laugh and went over and extended his hand to John and they hugged. And John had never met him before.
I mean, because that was like John's idol. So I mean.
Exactly. I was just getting ready to say that. Very good. And so I was just excited to see how excited John was. It was really touching.
Yeah, and you had amazing hair back then. Just an FYI.
Thank you very much. It's all gone now. At 74, not too much of it is still around, but yeah, that was the thing then. You know, I just was blessed with a good head of hair, and I let it hang out.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, who wouldn't want to have a big long head of hair? I mean, come on.
I agree.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, and then when did you guys start? Do you remember like what was the first song you guys recorded for the Sometime in New York City sessions?
Yeah, no, that would have been after Mike Douglas chronologically, and that's the first thing we went in is to start to work on a lot of John's songs, the political songs from that day. He wanted it to be like almost like a daily newspaper that's how they came up with the Sometime in New York City thing, as if he was dropping a new song every day we were in the studio, the record plant in New York for 2 weeks straight. So the first one, to answer your question, was Sunday Bloody Sunday, which had just happened. That was really supposed to be fresh off the press, so to speak. that terrible tragedy over there. And so that was the very first that I remember. And it was, that came out good. We were pleased for the first night. Everybody did their thing and it came out good. He was very happy. And Woman is the End of the World didn't really come in till like maybe the third, fourth night.
Oh, wow.
And by that time, John and Phil Spector were not really in sync too much. So I think it was maybe the third night. And so, but after that, Phil was gone. He didn't even come into the sessions. Sean finished the record as producer. And that was fine with us because Phil didn't really like us too much.
Yeah.
And,
do you have any memories of Phil Spector?
well, just the first night he came in, my famous story is just as I saw it, the first night I met him, he came in with a silver-handled revolver and an ounce of cocaine and just threw it right on the board. And that was the way that the whole thing started off. He was quite a character. Let me try to put it as
yeah. Definitely not in the greatest way. Do you know how many takes there was of Sunday Bloody Sunday?
Good question. I've never seen the track sheets, but just based on the whole record, Hudson, I don't think we did anything more than 2 or 3 takes, and that was it. I mean, that was the idea, was to get it alive. I mean, if we took it again, it was only because there was some technical thing going on on the board internally. It wouldn't have been because of his or our performances in the takes, because you got a couple of run-throughs. Like every day we showed up at 7 p.m. and we went to 7 a.m. in the morning, 12 hours straight every day. And when you showed up, he taught you the song for like the first hour, informally. And you talk about arrangements. You really wouldn't take time to actually run the arrangement until the take started. But you had a darn good idea how many choruses and verses and intro was going to be and this and that before you started your first take. So a couple of them, I think, ended up being first takes. I couldn't tell you which ones at this present time, but a little foggy, but it's, I doubt if any of them were more than 3 or 4.
Yeah. And did you guys realize that this was going to be a failure, the album?
Yeah. As a band, we still had to do our job, and we were studio musicians, so it was just another day at the office for us. But we knew a lot of those lyrics weren't going to fly, so it would probably be a problem. We weren't positive, but we had an inkling. I mean, I remember the keyboard player, a fantastic keyboard player, Adam Ippolito, and I passing in the hall and Adam going to me, "Did you hear the lyrics to the song for tomorrow night?" And, you just knew it was going to be trouble, and then ended up getting banned. I'm talking about Woman,
Yeah.
It ended up getting banned fairly quickly. So, and we were no strangers to that because we had just had a song banned, a single that we had done on Metro Media called Skyscraper Commando. And we had the word dope in the record, and it got banned right up the bat. So if we got banned for the word dope, we knew John was going to have a problem with the N-word.
Exactly. And I mean, if he did that today, I don't think it would be as big of a problem, but
you might be surprised. You might be surprised in this environment, in this political environment right now, the way people would bounce it around any way they could. It could still manufacture trouble, I guarantee you.
Dope,
but
maybe not.
One would like to hope that it wouldn't. I got you. But I don't know. Things just change real slow, man.
Yeah. So moving on, I want to talk about the song New York City.
Oh, good.
What do you remember about the sessions for that song? Because it is my favorite song on the album.
Well, it is mine as well. Thank you. I appreciate that. And of course, I have to say the reason that we were off the top with on right off the bat was we read that our name was the band was going to be in the lyrics. So that was like being immortalized by a Beatle. That was very exciting for all of us. We were really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't?
Exactly. So that's but I love that song musically as well as, our name being immortalized in the lyrics. It's just a rocker. It's a rocking song.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm a
very
rock
cool,
guy.
and very cool in the sense that of how he shares his experiences of Yoko and John in New York as they went through that first period of just moving to New York City and, all the exciting things they did, meeting David Peel and getting high in the park and, meeting the Elephants, going down to see us play at Max's Kansas City, the famous club in New York, and on and on. It was just a great story. They played the Fillmore and the Apollo Theater, and it's all in there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could have been on a Beatles album. It really does.
I agree because of the riffs and stuff in it and the guitar. It's just, yeah, I got you. It's got that written all over it. I agree.
And the
I
bass
haven't,
in there.
not too many
Perfect.
people have made that comparison, but I totally agree. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I mean, the bass and every instrument, I feel like, and it almost has a Spectre-y touch, but it sounds like John, interestingly
Yep,
enough.
yep, yep. I agree.
Um, do you remember anything about like who did the arrangements? Was that mostly John and Yoko or for the album?
Well, I'm sorry. What about the arrangements?
Who was it? Was the band kind of helping like with the arrangements and producing it as well?
Oh, definitely. John never told you what to play, at least when I worked with him with the Elephants. He wasn't like a producer in the sense he would like come in and have a line written out, and put this here and change this riff over there. Never. He was totally hands off on that because he knew we were studio players. He totally trusted us going in, so that wasn't going to be in the cards. We were free to come up with all of our own parts. And in terms of arrangements, as you mentioned, like I said, that was worked out early in the evening or 6:30. So by 7:30, we were hitting takes and had that all taken care of in terms of the arrangements. And yes, sometimes the Elephants would change things, or we would make decisions about who was going to play the solo and where it was going to be the solo. So that affected the bottom, the final arrangement as well. But John had a pretty good idea. He was had it pretty well worked out before he came in.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows on the record. It doesn't sound like something just John did. It sounds like a band.
Exactly. And that was his idea. That's why what he heard in us. He heard the energy. He heard that they are able to rock out, which he really wanted to do on the record. We could, but also at the same time be very sensitive and play a lot of different styles. Really, Elephant's Memory was a very, very versatile band. Stan Bronstein, the sax player, he just loved them. He was like a Bobby Keys, if you will, and kind of had that sound. And Stan had a heavy Latin background, so that he brought to the table. And Tex Gabriel, the guitar player, was in Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels out in Detroit before he moved to New York. Adam Ippolito and I had been in a Columbia band called Pig Iron that had some success in '68 and '69. And the drummer, Rick Frank, was another Latin percussionist. That was his side thing. So he was the guy that would be able to do all that sweetening on the record, overdubbing, tambourine, cowbell, whatever, all that mixed bag of rhythm instruments. So we were pretty prepared.
Yeah. What were your first impressions of a Yoko, and did they change after working with her in the studio?
Well, I tried to be open-minded, but it didn't take long that I could see that she was a player. She had a lot of influence on John. She had a lot of influence on us, but it was a good mix. We could fill the gaps of what she didn't have, and vice versa. We ended up playing live with her in New York as well. Just Yoko. We backed her up at a concert venue called Town Hall, and John was just in the audience that night. It was a lot of fun. So, and we went on to, as you know, to record her double album called Approximately Infinite Universe.
Great album.
Oh, it's my fave. I just love that album, especially my favorite of hers.
Yeah.
But Elephant's Memory, I have to say, I got to sound like an egomaniac here, but we just did a tremendous job on that album. That was our swan song, as opposed, when it comes to backing up the Lennons. That was not that there's anything wrong with Sometime in New York City or the live record, but we really got into ourselves and found things about ourselves as a band that we didn't even know we could do. And we got into that on her album. So that was a lot of fun. And chronologically, it was the last. So that would be a natural progression of how we became so comfortable in the studio with them and her, that it was, we're talking 1972, sometime in New York City was early, like February of 72, and Approximately Infinite Universe wasn't even began till like the fall, late fall, November and October, November, December of 72, and ran into 73. So that was a little bit later on. We spent a lot of hours at the record plant with all that recording for all of those ones we've been talking about. We were in there for weeks.
And John, I'm gonna guess John was at those sessions too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
He
was producing, Hudson.
Yeah, true. I forgot
that.
that.
It was pretty hard to get them separated, so he would have been there regardless.
Yeah. Could you see their relationship kind of deteriorating at that point? Because I know, like with Mind Games, which was in 73, you could kind of hear their relationship deteriorating in the songs. Was that present with them?
Yeah, we were. It was around the time of the end of Approximately Infinite Universe that things got a little hairy. So of course we were right there, so we saw that firsthand.
Which is unfortunately terrible, and thank God they got back together.
Thank God. Yeah, I'm happy for John that they did, because he got to be experience a part of his life, having Sean with Yoko and that whole period of going dark and just enjoying life. That ended up being huge for him, obviously.
Yeah. And did you ever get to meet Sean?
No, I have never met Sean.
Oh wow.
I have never had an opportunity to meet him. He would still, when we were doing things like, there was a movie called Imagine that there was an opening for in Manhattan, and then it would have been 2010. Are you familiar with the PBS documentary Lennon NYC?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we went to the opening of that, obviously, because, Adam Ippolito and I were pretty much half the movie. But But anyway, I was surprised he wasn't at that premiere. Now, that I think he would have been about, I think he would have been 30 by then, 29, 30. So
Yeah.
surprisingly, either I just missed him or I didn't see him at the reception or whatever, but we just never had that chance to meet. I'm sorry about that.
Did you meet Julian at all?
No, other members of the band did, but I never met him. I know our
Interesting.
guitarist, Tex Gabriel, has met him a couple of times and hung out, but it's just the way things go, in the jet set. It's hit or miss.
You never. I would be surprised that he was never, if he ever came to visit at the studio or anything. But I mean, they weren't really even together at that point.
Yes, like I said, we're talking 72 here. Things were just different then. They weren't, that I know I remember May Pang telling me that Julian was around when John was on the Lost Weekend out in LA. So it's not like, so I guess our time with John and Yoko was a little just too early for them. They hadn't quite made it back together yet.
Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about the one-on-one concerts now. Do you have any, I mean, when did you find out that this was going to be released? Like, how far in advance were you told that it was going to be, that the Live in New York City concert was going to be released?
As a record, you mean?
Yeah.
Or as a VHS?
As a record.
It was the record didn't really come out till after the VHS came out, and that was a while. That was I mean, it was out on TV and and this and that, but it didn't these VHS thing didn't happen till like in the 80s there somewhere, after John was murdered.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 86, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, 86 sounds about right. Because I mean,
yeah. So that's way after the concert in 72. So
yeah,
it still isn't out on DVD.
yeah. I mean,
why I have no clue. Everybody
have you heard anything?
I don't want to anticipate any questions you might have, but I have no clue why it isn't out on DVD. I ran into Jack Douglas, our producer, at the premiering of the Lennon NYC movie in Central Park. And I was asking Jack Douglas, what's going on? Are they going to redo that and get it on a DVD? And his answer was they were talking about it the last time he was with Yoko, and it was on the slate of things to do. So that's all I know. But there could be extenuating circumstances on that. There could be some technical problems, or I really don't know why they're holding off on that this long.
Yeah, because I'm guessing from transferring that from a VHS, I'm guessing the tape is pretty.
I don't
rusty.
know. It's always risky. I don't know how many. Did they have a a safe copy, as we call it, and this and that? And I'm really talking out my butt here. I really don't have an idea.
What do you think the possibilities of sometime in New York City getting an archive really are? Like what they did with Plastic Ono bands this year.
And with our 2 or 3 cuts from the live record and the Sometime in New York City are on the one that Sean just reduced. Give Me Some Truth. He just produced that. So there's a couple of cuts, 2 or 3 I have on there, I think. As far as that repackaging and doing that whole number like Plastic Ono Band, I think there's a good chance. They have a lot of stuff yet to get through in terms of, I don't know whether everything really needs to be done like that, but it's, it keeps it alive and keeps it going. New people get interested, new people buy it. There's just a whole bunch of positives on it. So It'd be nice to see.
I mean, I want young people to love the Beatles as much as I do. And I think that that would kind of help if we get more releases like that.
I agree. That's exactly my point. It can't hurt. Spread the faith, baby.
Yeah. Um, do you have any memories of Jim Keltner performing with you guys that night? On one of those concerts when he filled in?
Well, it wasn't really like he was filling in. It was not to correct you, but it was like he was in the Plastic Ono band.
Yeah.
So John and Yoko just didn't feel like he was somebody they wanted to let go. So he was with us right from the get-go on the sessions, and
Yeah.
he didn't fly in time to do the Mike Douglas show, but he was in time for some time in New York City, and later joined us for the live record. And it was always just a thrill to play with Jim. He was just a pleasure. One of my favorite cats out there. He's still doing it. It was a lot of fun. He was the consummate professional. As a matter of fact, there's one cut on sometime in New York City that that was just John and Jim Keltner and myself. John Sinclair. It was just the three of us. John playing dobro slide guitar, me on bass, and Jim Keltner on drums. So that's one of my biggest memories, is when he sent all the other elephants home, and it was just the three of us for like 6 hours.
You were the elephant in the room then. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, 3 people in a room with John. I mean, I would kill to have that experience.
It was pretty exciting. And, but we had a lot of fun along the way too. Mick Jagger stopped by one night. We just kind of bagged the session and just played around and fooled around and jammed for 2 or 3 hours. And one night, Jackie Kennedy Onassis stopped by. So with her whole entourage, including Rudolf Nureyev, the famous ballet dancer, and of course she had a couple of Secret Service agents with her with big guns sticking out of their jackets. So that was an interesting experience. And just every night there was somebody new stopping by. Carly Simon would come by. Carly Simon had actually been in Elephant's
Yeah.
so she was a friend of the band and stopped by to hang with John and all that. So it was quite an entourage of people the whole time we were at the record plant for some time in New York City.
Did you ever get to meet any other Beatles in your career?
Well, I was in the same room with Ringo. Long story short, Tex Gabriel, the guitar player in Elephants, his wife was the producer of the David Letterman show. So one time when Eric Clapton and Ringo were on the David Letterman show, I was invited to go to the show. So at one point, it was maybe 8 or 9 people, and you're kind of quickly introduced, and did he really get my name or whatever? Do you really know who I am? But it was that was my little get together with Ringo. It was exciting.
Really awesome. And
Never met Paul or George though.
I mean, have you seen Paul in concert before?
Oh yeah.
Great performer.
I just went recently to the Yankee Stadium performance. It was probably a couple of tours back, but maybe 2014 or something.
Oh wow. Yeah, I still haven't gotten around to seeing it. Crossing my fingers though.
It was worth every penny, and one of the most exciting things just to be there. And now with the big screens and stuff, it's not quite as bad as getting a nosebleed seat, as they say, because you can see them on the big screen. And it was just a lot of the Yankee Stadium presentation was really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to talk a little bit about, because I know you have done a couple shows with like the 4 lads that played with the Fab Four, and it's like Mark Hudson, you, Denny Sewell and Steve
Oh,
Holly.
okay. Yeah,
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, please?
yeah, of course. Uh, well, every year, as you know, and for your listeners' benefit, there's International Beatle Festival in Liverpool. Maybe there wasn't one last year, but everybody knows why. But in 2015, Mark Hudson got a hold of me and asked me, would you play bass for me? We're going to do a band called The Boys Who Knew the Lads. So the idea was that everybody that was going to be in the band had played with one of the Beatles, or more than one of the Beatles. So it ended up being Mark Hudson, of course, who everyone knows produced 9 Ringo albums, and and was on his tour band. There was Denny Sewell, who played on a couple of Paul's albums, some of his big hits, and we had Joey Mullen from Badfinger on guitar, and he, of course, had played on John's record Imagine, and had played with George. So, and then we had Earl Slick. We were able to get Earl Slick, so that was just the icing on the cake. Who played on Double Fantasy, of course, and so it was the 5 of us. We did a concert at the Royal Court Theatre in Liverpool in 2015. You can hear some of that stuff on YouTube. There's some stuff on there.
Great performance.
No, it was awesome. Mark's great. Mark's a great performer. He's a great comedian. He's a great musician. He's a great producer, and he's a great songwriter. So,
yeah,
boy.
Funny guy.
Oh my God, he's hilarious. We just never stopped the whole time. It was just amazing. He's got some great stories.
Yeah. Like
you should try to interview him, or have you?
I've tried. I can't get a hold of him.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because when he took, he was telling me I heard a story of him in a grocery store. And he ran into Eric Clapton, and Eric Clapton thought he was like a stalker or somebody.
He's a piece of work. Let me put that. I love him dearly.
I do too.
And I'm indebted to him for inviting me for that show in 2015, because that was one of the biggest shows I've ever done, besides playing Madison Square Garden with John Lennon.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty hard to beat that one, but it was a thrill working with Mark and all the guys, and being in a short-lived band called The Boys Who Knew the Lads. That's a great memory for me.
Do you think you guys would ever do an album together?
I would not doubt it, because just recently Mark produced a new record for Joey Mullen.
Yeah, and Steve Holly played on that too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Steve would. The only reason that Steve wasn't on the 2015 concert that I just went through and explained about, it would have been Steve Holly. I think that was Mark's first choice, but Steve was still on the road with Mott the Hoople.
Oh.
Or Ian Hunter, more or less.
Yeah.
Which is his main gig. He's been in Ian Hunter's band for 30-some years.
Yeah, I mean, and
so that's a
killer drummer.
You don't walk away from a gig you've been on for 30 years,
Yeah.
So it was just a mix-up in the dates. He couldn't get from France to Liverpool for that night. He knew he's very experienced at that. He knew he wasn't going to be able to get in into enough time to rehearse the tunes and do a good job on the show. So he just had to back out, and that's where we came up with Denny, which was fine with me.
Man, he can.
Either one, it's like I'm in heaven. We're talking Jim Keltner, Sewell and Holly here. I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven as a bass player. I've died and gone to heaven.
Yeah. So now I want to turn it over to you to plug what you would like to plug.
Oh, sure. Well, I just invite all your listeners to check me out on Facebook at GaryVanScyoc.com is in my website, and you can look up on Facebook Gary Van Scyoc uh, fan page is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, I'll link
So
it.
I have a fan page. It just got too crazy to have a regular page. And so I started a fan page about 10 years ago, and it's worked out great. I just keep everybody updated on what I'm doing and playing around and this and that, recordings. Like I said, I had my own album out in 2015 called Pop Goes the Elephant. That's available at GaryVanScyoc.com on the store. You can order that and t-shirts. And I have a book out called Shortcuts to Improving Your Bass Playing. That's available on my website. Decided I teach a lot of bass through the years and on the side, and always have. So I wrote that book in, I think it was 2008. So all that stuff's on my website, and appreciate being able to invite everybody to share in that. Thank you.
So, first of all, you can contact me at I know podcast at iCloud.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube page for all those listeners out there that have not yet. And thank you all for listening. And thank you again, Gary. We really love
Thank you, Hudson, for having me on. I appreciate it.